Okay, we cut out, so we just have a couple pages to finish part 2 of section or lecture 4. This will be video number 7, I believe. Let me get right into it. Proper distinction between law and gospel. Here you have an instance of the excoriation of a preacher who knows that his congregation needs an application of the law, but for a piece of bread keeps silent. Verily, let woe be cried. Woe upon everyone who furnishes soft pillows and cushions for secure sinners. They are lulling those to sleep with the gospel, who ought to be roused from their sleep by means of the law. It is a wrong application of the gospel to preach it to such as are not afraid of sinning. We don't preach the gospel to those that are uncontrite, unrepentant. They're dead in their sins. They're set on sinning. They don't want to hear the gospel. They have not been broken by the law. They first need to be broken by the law, slain by the law. They need to be broken by the law, slain by the law. The law must do its work before they get gospel. So we don't give gospel to people that don't need it. They need more law. They need more law, like the rich young ruler. I've kept the commandments since my youth. Really? Jesus said really, so he pushed law on him. But the woman caught in adultery in John 8, did he press law on her? He said, you were forgiven. Your sins are forgiven. Go and sin no more. He didn't press law on her because she was contrite, repentant. She was broken by the law. That's the difference. That's the difference. So that's what we need to understand in preaching the gospel. And this is something that's going to take me years to even get remotely right. On the other hand, an even more horrible situation is created if the pastor is a legalistic pastor who refuses to preach the gospel to his congregation because he says these people will misuse it anyway, are poor sinners on that account to be deprived of the gospel. Let the wicked perish. Nevertheless, the children of God shall know how near at hand their help is and how easily it is obtained. Anyone withholding gospel from such as are in need of consolation fails to divide law and gospel. Woe again and woe to such a one. Zechariah relates the following, chapter 11, verse 7. I will feed the flock of slaughter, even you, O poor of the flock. And I took upon me 2 staves. The one I call beauty, on the other bands, and I fed the flock. A real spiritual shepherd has 2 staves, or rods. The rod of beauty is the gospel. The rod of bands is the law. He must be well informed as to the persons to whom it is to apply, either the one to the other of these 2 staves. The Messiah, who is the speaker in this message, says that he used the bands against the flock of slaughter, not against the sheep which were slaughtered and not to be led to pasture. And, quote, the poor of the flock, end quote, represent poor sinners. Among them he uses the comforting staff and rod of the gospel. Most preachers make the mistake of hurling the rods of bands among the sheep, using the rod of beauty for wicked knaves. By the way, Luther's translation of this passage is unexcelled. Would that the people who want to revise Luther's Bible would stick to their private affairs. Even nature teaches that certain materials must not be mixed if they are to retain their salutary virtue. There are certain substances that are by themselves salutary, but when they are mixed, they are turned into poison. That is what happens when law and gospel are mingled. Or take an instance from colors. When you combine yellow and blue, it is neither yellow nor blue but green. In the like manner, there arises a third substance, when law and gospel are confounded in a sermon. The new substance is entirely foreign to either original substance and causes both of them to lose their virtue. In a sermon on the distinction between law and gospel, Luther writes, "It is therefore a matter of utmost necessity that these two kinds of God's word be well and properly distinguished. Where this is not done, neither the law nor the gospel can be understood, and the consciences of men must perish with blindness and error. The law has its goal fixed beyond which it cannot go to accomplish anything, namely until the point is reached where Christ comes in. It must terrify the impenitent with threats of wrath and displeasure of God." Likewise, the gospel has a particular function and task: to proclaim forgiveness of sins to sorrowing souls. These two may not be commingled, nor one substituted for the other, without a falsification of doctrine. For while the law and the gospel are indeed equally God's word, they are not the same doctrine. Great quote from Luther. Luther's sermon, type it in, Luther's sermon on law and gospel, 1532. Only 12-page sermon. Excellent, excellent. I should read that sometime. Excellent stuff. You may correctly state the law says that what the gospel says, but when you come from your statement so that as to commingle both, you produce poison for souls. Remember, law and gospel are God's word, but different kinds of doctrine. A person who does not understand this difference, the true difference, has nothing whatever to offer people. But even the mere knowledge or memorization of this difference does not prove helpful, for one can learn the facts of this difference in a few hours when preparing for an examination. This is important as well. This knowledge must be reinforced by experience. Not until that is done will a person understand that the distinction between these two doctrines is a glorious one. In the beginning of the sermon just referred to, Luther says, "This is the meaning of St. Paul. Among Christians, both preachers and hearers must adopt and teach a definite distinction between the law and the gospel, between works and faith." Accordingly, Paul enjoins this distinction upon Timothy when he exhorts him in 2 Timothy 2:15, "Rightly divide the word of truth," etc. This distinction between the law and the gospel is the supreme art among Christians. Each and all of those who glory in the name of Christian or have adopted it may and well understand this art. For wherever there is a deficiency in this respect, it is impossible to distinguish a Christian from a Gentile or Jew. So important is this distinction. For this reason, Paul so strenuously insists that these two doctrines, the law and the gospel, be well and properly distinguished among Christians. Both law, or the Ten Commandments, and the gospel are indeed God's word. The latter was given by God at the beginning in paradise, the former at Mount Sinai. But the matter of decisive importance is this, that these two words be properly distinguished and not commingled. Otherwise, the true meaning of neither will be known nor retained. Yea, imagining that we have both, we shall find that we possess neither. Beautiful from Luther. And that's the second part to our fourth lecture. And I'll have, you can follow along with Walther in the description. Have a blessed day, everyone. I hope this has blessed someone.